Alright, hello everybody again. Another game in a Capablanca Lasker World Championship match. This time game 7. Capablanca on the white side goes d4, surprise. Then we go d5, knight f3, e6, c4, knight f6, bishop g5. So we are following the previous games, 1 and 5 at least. Bishop e7, e3, knight bd7, knight c3, castles, rook c1. So this exact position we have had already twice in this match. In both games, Lasker went with the Tartakower's variation b6, whereas then we got chop chop. And game 1 we got bishop b5, which ended in a draw. And game 5, Capa improved with queen a4, which he won. So Lasker decides to try something different, play c6, so we get the Semi-Slav structure, a triangle going on here, really solid. Plan is probably gonna be pop, pop, bring out this guy here, or something different. So as far as I know, according to my database, the Capablanca had not been here before. He went on to play this a lot on white and black side. Black side especially against Aliekin. In later games on, well, in this game Capa plays queen c2. Later on he went to play also bishop d3, which is also, as far as I know, Lasker had been here before. For example, against this match against Steinitz, Steinitz had played bishop d3 against him. And, well, then we did get chop, chop, knight d5, bishop takes, queen takes e4, and then kind of funky knight f4, provoking some weaknesses, jumping there, castles, rook d8, queen e2, b5, bishop b3, bishop b7, and well, after a build-up, and black eventually got the c5 in and was better for a while, but I didn't manage to win. Anyways, queen c2. And then black does something little weird, plays c5. Why weird? Well, because we just played c6 and now we are playing c5. Is this justified? Well, I feel like queen c2 is probably hinting of playing e4 and trying to get the big center here. Trying to force black to take somewhere. Well, if you don't, then you have to face a possibility of the pawn going through further, which is also possible, but definitely not something everybody wants to face. This puts the question instantly into the center here. I don't know if white can instantly play e4 because he has to be a little worried about all the checks too, but or that it can be annoying. But this starts the fight in the center at the cost of a tempo instantly. In a game, Capa played rook d1, lining up with a queen. Probably he could have just played c takes d in a way. Black could take with the pawn. He could also take with the knight in a way that he wants to, if he wants to avoid the IQP. I don't know, maybe white will take like that previous games and we end up somewhere like this. I suppose here, and maybe castles, bring the rook here. It's would have been a way to play. Of course, also taking with the pawn is possible, but then we might end up in some kind of IQB at some point if white ever takes here. And if black takes, then we take with the knight and guarantee that. Anyways, instead of that, we get rook d1. And the queen jumps to a5, puts the pressure here. Pretty much denying this possibility. And also sometimes we take a look here in a way that the pawns in the center could get chopped off. Or you could see something like takes, bishop comes here and knight jumps here, and suddenly there's double attacks like in a Cambridge Springs, like a trappish situations. I don't think they work here, but well, Capa takes on the center. Black takes with the knight, defending backwards. Pop, pop. Then we get the bishop out with tempo here, hitting this. But it's not really a problem because black gets the queen knight to a nice square here, defending backwards. So no harm done there. White castles, and then we get a clarification in the center. Pop. And white doesn't want to get an IQB, which is probably not a great one for him here. So he takes with the knight, and well, we get this C and D files open. Black has some issues here with this knight probably needs to find a home. I don't know, maybe here. This bishop needs to get a home, and then rooks probably end up in the center. White is fully developed, but on the other hand, apart from this battery here, they're not really firing that hot here. Like the knight is not getting anywhere useful at the moment. I mean, he can of course go here in designs to trade off the defender, but well, we'll see. Black tries to bring out the bishop. Scary, but kind of holds. Like you have to be a little careful, something like this doesn't work, but here the queen can go backwards somewhere and defend the bishop. So no worries done. Well, white plays knight e4. Threat is to chop and chop. So black defends it handily with the knight here. So if takes, defends. White hits the queen. And here black has to be a little careful with the tactics here. So if he does something careless like this, he ends up losing a pawn to chop, chop, chop. And knight is now overloaded here. White wins a pawn. Hooray. Well, Lasker being a Lasker probably saw that. Surprise. And defends the bishop here. Of course, it's not ideal in a way you are going into a pin here. But we take. We get one piece out of the way. But the piece going backwards already defends the d7, so this is not a problem. Black can sidestep this. Well, maybe he should first draw in this one, because if you instantly sidestep this, then you might get pinned some more. So rook c8 is a nice little in-betweener there before you sidestep the pins, and then further liquidations, or white goes back and says, ooh, I didn't manage to get anything. So instead of that, white just goes queen c5. And then, well, obviously we'd love to put the bishop here, but then pop and pop. So black gets the queen out of the way with the queen b6. Letting white ruin his structure by taking. He did not take. Here, well, here of course the a pawn is hanging, and this might even actually get kind of awkward for white if you let this happen. And then what do we do about this? If you do this, then oh, what about that? And then if you do this, then chop, 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 and you might lose. Not forced, of course, but possibilities. So white defends the queen instead of taking, and black says, how about you take? Well, white says, I guess so, and takes. Then we take, and then white gets rid of the rook pressure here by chopping. I mean, of course, black could take with the bishop here, but he takes with the rook. And there's no pins here anymore, so a3 is fine too. White says, let's trade more. Black says, yes. White takes back. And after king f8, we agreed to a draw. There's some play against a little weakened structure here. I feel like white could have maybe tried a little bit squeezing here. But maybe it was a really hot day at Havana that day. They didn't want to bother. It's obviously completely equal. But, well, anyways, if somebody watched this, sorry for the kind of a non-game. It had some moments, but really nothing really interesting happened at any point. I find often the factor of these when the d4 openings where the center gets chopped off, like both players play the pawns here, and we see some kind of a chop, resulting in the two open files. They tend to liquidate all the major pieces instantly off and dwindles into a kind of often very symmetrical endgames, which are very hard to play for a win. Here we have a little non-symmetry here by the structure here, but it's not enough to actually play for a win. Anyways, thanks for watching and see you next time. Ciao.